Hey FPL managers, it's Josh here from FPL Hawley. I hope you all had a great festive period. Game week 21 brought me a small red arrow. I scored 51 points, which was a 30k drop to 138k overall, and I rolled my transfer. Now, Michael Keane's red card, although frustrating, has actually solved a transfer headache for me. Today, I'm breaking down my game week 21 performance, three crucial lessons, including why Thiago might be back as the must-have striker partner with Haaland, Bruno Fernandes' comeback injury, and my complete strategy for navigating the Cup madness. Let's dive into it. Right, so game week 21, I scored 51 points, which was a 30k red arrow, taking me down to 138k overall rank. And considering I rolled my transfer, I'm actually not too disappointed with the outcome. So let's start with the heroes, because there definitely were some bright spots for me. Thiago, again, the man just keeps delivering for me. He got that another double-digit haul, which was 12 points this time. I'm so glad I held him through the last few game weeks. I'd actually planned to downgrade him a few weeks ago to shift to a 3-5-2 formation, but fires elsewhere in my team kept him in, which was really lucky for me. And Harry Wilson as well. He got 9 points. Now, Wilson's done that classic FPL thing of blanking in the games I expected him to return in and then hauling when I least expected it. I bought him in as a very short-term punt, and he went ahead and blanked in the game weeks that I wanted him for. But again, I decided to roll my transfer and focus on other fires in my team. So I'm really pleased with that. Again, very fortunate decision to hold on to the players. And again, with FPL, it's a really good lesson that sometimes patience can be key to doing well. If you back a player, bring them in and let them return for you. But here's where my game week went south. My defence across the board was pretty disappointing. Michael Keane looked like he was going to be an absolute hero when he scored early on, and he even hit the post again later in the game. Then he went and got himself a very silly red card towards the end of the match. And not only did that leave him with just 5 points, but he's now suspended for 3 games because it was foul play. Everton tried to appeal the red card, but it's actually been upheld as well. So that means Keane misses Everton's FA Cup fixture this weekend, which has just happened, and their next Premier League fixture away to Aston Villa in game week 22, which I probably would have benched him for anyway. But then he also misses Everton's nice fixture at home to Leeds in game week 23. Now, this has put Keane firmly in my crosshairs for a transfer out. The reason being, I've been looking for an excuse to bring Gabriel in from Arsenal. So Keane to Gabriel with a few other moves feels like the direction I'm heading in. Now, Chow at Newcastle, he got me a -1, which really stung. Again, I can't really complain because he gave me a 17-pointer just the week before, but he conceded 2 goals and then got that silly yellow card, and he was actually taken off at half-time. Now, I was originally really nervous about Chow's minutes with Sven Botman coming back, who Eddie Howe bought on for Chow, but then Fabian Schär, the other centre-half, went and picked up what looks like a really bad injury, and it looks like Schär will be out for the long term. So actually now Chow and Botman will probably be Newcastle's centre-back pairing moving forward in the short term anyway. So I'm now less nervous about Chow's minutes, which is good. So he will be a hold for me moving forward. Van de Ven as well. He got me 7 points last week. Really happy with that. And then he goes and gets me 0 points as Spurs defence can do what they do. They conceded 3 goals to Bournemouth. O'Reilly got benched, which, to be honest, was coming. It's just disappointing it happened this game week. He came off the bench for a 1-pointer, but I'd now expect that O'Reilly's had his rest and he'll play the next batch of games for Man City. One thing to note, though, on O'Reilly's minutes is Ryan Aït-Nouri has now returned, or is soon to return from AFCON very soon. So he can also play at left back. So that's just one thing to consider with O'Reilly. All my premium midfielders also blanked. So Cunha, Foden and Saka all got 2s and 3s, which was really frustrating. And then Haaland got his first goal in a while. It was just a 6-pointer from a converted penalty, and I captained him like I think everyone else did. So he got me 12 points. Not spectacular, but solid enough. So all in all, a pretty average game week and a pretty small red arrow. Generally, I'm still inside the top 150k at this stage of the season, which I'm pretty pleased with, can't complain. So yeah, let me know how many points you scored in the comments in game week 21. I really want to know if you're a red arrow like me or getting green arrows at this point in the season. Right, so three massive takeaways from Game Week 21 that are shaping my decisions for the weeks ahead. So first up, are Brentford and Thiago back on the menu? So as said, I already have Thiago and I'm delighted I hold him. But the question is Thiago now the must-have strike partner to Haaland, particularly with Ekitike flagged and not hauling like we'd expect him to? Thiago has 5 goals in his last 2 games, and he's the second highest scoring striker by far. He's actually 30 points better off than Bowen, who's in 3rd place. So you might think, okay, well, that in isolation, forwards generally this season haven't been great. But Thiago's actually only 43 points behind Haaland, the man himself. And in the entire game of FPL this whole season, Thiago is the joint 3rd highest point scorer in the whole of FPL. He's second to only Haaland and Rice, and then he's level 3rd with Semenyo. So that's a really interesting stat. So in terms of consistency, Thiago's definitely delivering. And at the time of recording, he's been transferred in by over 350,000 managers, and he's still just 7.1 million, which is still an absolute bargain, by the way. That's half the price of Haaland. But it's not just Thiago at Brentford. There are really brilliant Brentford assets to consider in every position. Kelleher in goal is still just 5.4 million, which was the price he started the season at. And he's the second best value goalkeeper across the entire season after Rolfs at Sunderland. And Rolfs is actually up to 4.9 now. So you could 0.4 million saving going with Kelleher. Collins at just 5 million is the most informed defender in the game right now because he's paired 3 attacking returns in his last 2 game weeks. And then you've got Schade in midfield. Although he can be quite streaky, he's shown us what he can do with his hat-trick in game week 18. And then Janelt at just 4.9 million is the 3rd most informed midfielder in the game with 3 assists in his last 2 game weeks. So really good options across Brentford in all positions at really good prices. And Brentford are now 5th in the league. And Keith Andrews must be dreaming of a European finish. The second piece of news is that Bruno Fernandes is back. And this changes everything from a Manchester United perspective. So Bruno started and played 60 minutes against Burnley. At number 10, he scored 7 points with a single assist, but he definitely could have had more. And there are now strong rumours that Solskjaer might be coming back to the club. So this means that Bruno will probably push back into his favoured number 10 position, which is exactly where you want Bruno Fernandes. I'll be keeping a close eye on him for the next 2 fixtures. He's at home to Man City in 22 and away to Arsenal in 23, which are both really tough. But then from game week 24, Man United start a really nice run, which includes Fulham at home and West Ham away. So I will strongly be considering a big hitting midfield formation that includes Bruno and possibly Palmer for those great fixture runs. And then third, let's talk about enabling forwards. These are the ones to watch if you want to free up funds. So with Antoine Semenyo gone to Man City and Justin Kluivert undergoing surgery, there could be more minutes for 4.6 million forward Kroupi Jr at Bournemouth. He's already scored 7 goals this season and he's actually only started 7 game weeks. So if Kroupi Jr gets consistent minutes, he could be an absolute steal at that price. And at 4.5 million, forward Mane at Wolves has started their last 4 games and he has 2 goals and an assist in his last 2 matches. So again, if the minutes are there, which they seem to be under Rob Edwards, that's incredible value at that price point. I will seriously consider downgrading Ekitike to one of these 2 if Ekitike is confirmed not fit for the Burnley match, or I might just do the move from game week 23 onwards when Liverpool's fixture run changes slightly. That would allow me then to shift funds into my midfield and defence, which is exactly where I want to strengthen if I'm going to go for that big hitter midfielder setup, as I mentioned earlier. Right, now we have double midweek madness between game weeks 21 and 22. Some teams are playing in 2 different cup competitions between the 2 FPL deadlines. Now let me talk you through exactly what this looks like. So this weekend, which is the FA Cup 3rd round, these matches run from Friday the 9th of January through to Monday the 12th of January. At the time you're watching this, these games may have already all been played or most of them will have been played. So you may be in a fairly informed position about these fixtures, but just note that every single Premier League team is in this round. Some have already been knocked out of the competition and some are still yet to play. There will be expected rotation with some teams, but just be aware that injuries and suspensions could happen during these FA Cup matches. There's always that risk with cup football. The second cup competition happening is the Carabao Cup semi-final first legs. Now, these are being played on Tuesday, the 13th of January, which will be Newcastle versus Man City. And then on Wednesday, the 14th of January, you have Chelsea versus Arsenal. The second legs of these semi-finals will be played on the 3rd and 4th of February, which is between FPL Gameweeks 24 and 25. I would really encourage you all, where possible, to try and hold off making any transfers until the Friday press conferences ahead of Game Week 22. The reason being is that all FPL teams have at least one FA Cup game this weekend, and those very popular FPL teams, which are Newcastle, Man City, Chelsea and Arsenal, all have 2 games because they play in the FA Cup and then the Carabao Cup. I will look to do a video on Thursday or Friday doing a very quick summary of what happened in these cup competitions from an FPL perspective, including who played what minutes, any suspensions, injuries and impact. So do keep an eye out for that video. But again, I'll reiterate, I know that the price swings are crazy right now, but try and hold on to making any transfers before all the cup competitions are done. I've made an updated slide of my very popular chip strategy, breaking the season down into 2 halves, and we are now officially into the second half of this current FPL season, which has absolutely flown by. And as you can see from this slide, we're now in the next block of 4 fixtures in the green box at the top right. So this block of fixtures runs from game week 22 to 25. So between game weeks 22 and 23 and 23 and 24, we have the final 2 match days, match day 7 and 8, of the UEFA Champions League and the UEFA Europa League. That's going to affect 8 Premier League teams, which will be Arsenal, Chelsea, Man City, Liverpool, Spurs, Newcastle, who are all in the Champions League, and then Aston Villa and Nottingham Forest, who are in the Europa League. Please note there is no Europa Conference League happening during this period, so Crystal Palace don't play European fixtures again until the playoffs, which sit between game weeks 26 and 27 from an FPL perspective. So, going back to this current block of fixtures, after match day 7 and 8 of the European competitions, between game weeks 24 and 25, we have the second legs of those Carabao Cup semi-finals I was talking about on the previous slide. So again, that's Newcastle versus Man City and Chelsea versus Arsenal. And all 4 of those teams are also in the Champions League. If you look at teams like Arsenal, Man City, potentially Chelsea, they have big squads and they're going to be looking to go deep across all the competitions they're playing. They're already through to the knockout rounds of the Champions League, most of them in Europe. So they're going to be playing nearly every weekend and every midweek, possibly until towards the end of the season. You throw in there as well the odd Premier League midweek fixture round, like game week 26, game week 29, blanks and doubles, and it's just going to start to be absolute chaos. So this is why a slide like this for me is really helpful, just to map and have a think about how I want to approach this crazy time of the season. I will go through this slide in more detail as we progress, but this is just what you should be aware of right now, because as each game week goes by, more matches will be played and we'll know more about who's going through, who's qualified, and who's going to be blanking and potentially doubling as well. But just note, there is going to be a lot of rotation happening, particularly in between the Champions League matches. And for a team like Arsenal, who look like they've already qualified from the UEFA Champions League group stage, expect them to heavily rotate midweek in their remaining 2 Champions League games and play fuller or stronger strength teams in their FPL games as well, which is great for us from an FPL perspective. Now, please note, in terms of my chip strategy at the moment, this is very, very nascent because so much will change based on what we know and when exact blanks and double game weeks will land. But at the moment, we have game weeks 27, I've highlighted them in orange, but we have game weeks 27, 29, and 36 flagged as potential double game weeks. Then we have a blank in game week 31 for the Carabao Cup final. Game week 33 is then confirmed as a double game week. And at the moment, I would expect that double game week in 33 to be one of the bigger ones of the season. Game week 34 then is a confirmed blank game week, as that's the FA Cup semi-finals, assuming that Premier League teams get to the semi-finals, which they usually always do. So as it stands, I've put my triple captain star against game week 29. I believe they're at home to Nottingham Forest. So if Man City do double in game week 29, and Haaland still in good form around them, and they have Forest and another good fixture, then triple captaining Haaland feels like a good option right now based on what we know. It then feels like a really good time to wildcard around game week 32. Now, there are 2 reasons for this. So first, after game week 31, which is already a confirmed blank game week because that's when the Carabao Cup final happens, and we know there's going to be 2 Premier League teams because there's only Premier League teams in the semi-finals. What you could do is build towards game week 31 using your transfers to navigate that upcoming blank game week, and then you would look to dead end your team in game week 31 and then wildcard out of that blank in game week 32. So do note though, however, between game weeks 31 and 32 over the Easter break, there's an international break, the FA Cup quarterfinals, and then the quarterfinal first leg of all the European competitions. So if I use Arsenal as an example, someone like Bukayo Saka could, between game 31 and 32, play 2 matches for England on the international break, play an FA Cup quarterfinal, and then a Champions League quarterfinal first leg before he would even play again in game week 32. So that's 4 games in a very short space of time. The saving grace here would be at least that the players aren't returning straight from an international break into an FPL game week, which can sometimes cause a bit of chaos, particularly if there are players traveling from places like South America. So again, if I'm using Saka as an example here, he would go off on international duty after game week 31 and play potentially for England on international break, but he would then return to Arsenal and play potentially in the FA Cup quarterfinal and then again in the Champions League if Arsenal are still in both those competitions. So you would at least know Saka's level of fitness, you'd be able to watch him play for Arsenal, he'd be back integrated into the squad before you made that wild card. So the wild card in game week 32 would then set you up really nicely to bench boost in the confirmed double game week 33, which I think is going to be one of the bigger. In game week 34, when there's going to be blanks because of the FA Cup semi-finals, you could then play your free hit to navigate those blanks. Now, I know some players like to use their free hit to be a bit more aggressive and play them in the doubles rather than be reactive and play them in the blanks. So you could switch these chips around. But either way, so far, I really like this chip strategy based on what I know. I will be returning back to this slide every week based on the updated information that we get about how these blanks and doubles are going to fall and which teams are progressing in which competitions. So to summarize, in the immediate to short term, my goal is to try and set up my team so I can run for as long as I can and hold on to my wild card. And then I feel like a game week 32 wildcard is a really nice way to set me up to really attack those last 8 game weeks of the season or so, which is when we can see some huge swings in rank. Now, for my updated player watch list, this list is very bespoke to my team and my needs. And I know there will be a lot of managers who have moved very quickly for the likes of Gabriel, but I don't have Gabriel because I have so many fires that I needed to put out. So let me talk you through my thinking position by position. So in goal, moving forward, I think Robert Sanchez at Chelsea has such a nice fixture run over the next 10 game weeks or so. And at just 4.9 million, he's an absolute steal. You could also go for Rolfs at Sunderland because they also have a nice fixture run in the medium term. The one reservation I would have with Chelsea is that they've just got a new manager. We haven't really had a chance to see them yet. They've just played in the FA Cup last night, so we're not having a chance to see them in the Premier League yet. So bringing in a Chelsea asset right now might be a little bit risky, but I think Sanchez will be their first choice goalkeeper moving forward. The also thing as well is you don't know what type of football Racine is going to play. He could be very defensive, he could be very attacking. So it's a bit of a wait and see, but at just 4.9 million, I do think that Sanchez is a great pick regardless. Now, in terms of defenders, for me, the standout defender in all categories, potentially in the whole of the game, is Gabriel. And as I mentioned earlier, Michael Keane's suspension has kind of solved the headache for me because I was originally looking at my team wondering who I could or should sell, whereas in actual fact, I will get Gabriel now, barring an injury in one way, shape or form. Alderete at 4.1 million at Sunderland is a brilliant enabler. And to be honest, you could do Alderete, you could do Mukiele, or you could be Ballard. They're all under 4.5 million. And I do really like the idea of a Sunderland enabling defender. And I'm actually a little bit tempted to potentially have Alderete and maybe Rodon at Leeds and have 2 defenders in that budget category. Just because they're both playing really well, and Sunderland in particular at home are defensively very solid. Now, in terms of midfielders, this is where I'm very tempted to go big in the middle, as it were, and have a big hitting midfield setup. So particularly with the likes of Chelsea's really nice fixture run coming up, and Bruno Fernandes back, and Man United's nice fixture swing from game week 24. So Bruno Fernandes at 9.1 million. I've already talked about him earlier, but he's very much back on my watch list. And Palmer is at 10.4 million. Now, Palmer is quite expensive for his output, and I do wonder if looking at the right-hand side of the slide, where Enzo Fernandez is just 6.4 million, could Enzo be the 4 million saving alternative to Palmer? So what I've understood from Liam Rosenior from a tactical perspective is that Andre Santos, who's now a Chelsea player, played for Liam Rosenior at Strasbourg last season. And he did very well, which got him the move to Chelsea. So the thought process is that Rosenior will favour players that he knows, and you're not going to drop Caicedo because he is a world-class holding midfielder. So the thought process is that Santos and Caicedo will play together in the double pivot, which will then push Enzo up into the number 10 role, and then Cole Palmer will shift out to the right. I think we saw that in the last game week, even before Rosenior had officially taken charge. So Palmer, as I understand it, is more effective coming in off the right. But if Enzo plays in the number 10 role, Would you rather save that 4 million for Chelsea's number 10 in Enzo Fernandes rather than put it on Palmer as an example and have a much stronger defensive midfield? So that's just one thing I'm considering. The other midfielder on this list I'm seriously considering is Declan Rice. Now, again, I'm sure a lot of you have Declan Rice. He's the highest scoring midfielder. I've just had a bit of a blind spot with him this season. I've been tripled up in Arsenal in other areas, and I've not broken my team up to bring Rice in. But an option for me is to downgrade Saka to Rice, which would allow me to upgrade Keane to Gabriel. And similar to the Palmer and Enzo conversation, is Rice just a 3 million saving alternative to Saka and arguably a better asset? He's scored more points so far this season. He can give you double-digit hauls, he can score, he can assist, he can get DEFCON. And actually, when I look at my midfield, the 3 players that I'm looking at in midfield would be Saka, Foden, and Palmer. I don't own Palmer yet, but if we use these 3 as an example, could they be Rice, Enzo, Fernandes, and Shirky? Now, I haven't actually done the maths, and I might do that in my next video, but think how much you could save. I think it's at least going to be sort of 10, 12 million. That can be really nicely redistributed amongst your team, and you're still getting cover in those positions. Now, the other wildcard midfield option that I really like is Tavernier at Bournemouth. So similar to the point I made earlier with Kroupi Jr, with Semenyo gone and Justin Kluivert out having surgery, Tavernier now could step up, be on penalties and be on set pieces, and he's only 5.5 million. Bournemouth's fixture run is okay, but I do wonder if he's going to play week in, week out. He's got really good attacking threat. He's going to be the main man in this Bournemouth team. So we just need to keep an eye out whether Bournemouth sign any midfielders. Minteh to Tavernier for me could be a really nice move that frees up a little bit of funds, but I'd be much happier with Tavernier in my team. And finally, for the forwards. So Thiago's mentioned earlier, he's back on the list. I have him and he's not going anywhere. But as mentioned, I am very tempted to downgrade Ekitike to either Kroupi Jr or Mane at Wolves. Now, for my upcoming captaincy plans, I like to look at my captaincy matrix in blocks of 4 fixtures. So this is my breakdown of game weeks 22 to 25. But so far, the captaincy preferences for me are actually split across each game week, as you can see. So in game week 22, I do really like Ekitike at home. Burnley are defensively the worst team in the league, but there is obviously a big question mark over Ekitike's fitness. He's flagged. And another point is, do you go against Haaland away at Manchester United? Because City and Haaland's previous performances against Manchester United have been massive. He usually gets a hat-trick or at least returns. So game week 22 is a bit of a TBC for me, and I'll be making a decision nearer the time if we get one. Now for game week 23, Man City have Wolves at home. For me, that's a Haaland captain all day long. If we didn't have doubles potentially coming up, that could even be a triple captain shout, but I'm not going to overthink it. Haaland captain at home to Wolves in game week 23. Game week 24, Chelsea have the nicest fixture with West Ham at home. So this is where Palmer potentially comes into the equation. Would you want to captain Enzo Fernandes? Possibly not. Would you captain Palmer? Yes, most certainly. That is where I do consider Palmer at least an option in game week 24 as a captaincy punt. But the other option here is that Arsenal play away at Leeds. Now, Leeds have been much better, but Arsenal have traditionally done very good at Ellen Road. So maybe Saka as an alternative in game week 24, and then you could just have some Chelsea cover for the West Ham game with Enzo Fernandes. And then finally in game week 25, it would definitely be Saka with Arsenal playing Sunderland at home, but Palmer or a Chelsea asset away at Wolves in game week 25. So again, you've got a bit of alternation between Arsenal and Chelsea in game weeks 24 and 25, having the nicest fixtures. So as you can see, very interesting for captaincy over the next 4 game weeks. So in order, it would be a Liverpool player to a City player to a Chelsea player to an Arsenal player. So that's a really strong argument to say that we should have a good spread of coverage across these 4 teams, which goes back to my previous point. Maybe let's not overinvest in single assets and see that we can get good coverage across all of those teams with maybe the more affordable midfield alternatives of Rice, Shirky and Enzo Fernandes. Who are you planning to captain over the next few game weeks? Let me know in the comments below. And finally, this is how I'm currently thinking about my game week 22 setup. And before I make any transfers, I have 0.1 million in the bank and I have 3 free transfers. I was originally looking at my team thinking I could potentially roll, particularly if I got positive news that Ekitike was definitely fit for Burnley at home. So what's interesting about my team right now is that although Minteh is flagged, there's a good chance that he could play on Sunday for Brighton in the FA Cup against Manchester United. And Fabian Hürzeler has suggested as such. Bournemouth at home is a good fixture for Brighton. Bournemouth's defence has not been good away from home, but Minteh's Premier League minutes have not been great. And I'm really not keen on some of Hürzeler's recent comments around him. So Minteh is very much in the departure lounge for my team. And again, could be a nice excuse to wrap up transfers if I'm also getting rid of Michael Keane. So for Michael Keane, as I said, I actually didn't originally realise that his suspension was for 3 matches, 1 in the FA Cup and 2 in FPL. I thought he was just going to be suspended for Aston Villa away. I was happy to bench him anyway, and then I would have him back for Leeds. But now I know that Michael Keane is going to miss that Leeds match. There is a medium to long-term concern with Michael Keane that Jared Branthwaite will return from injury quite soon and potentially take Keane's place. So that has forced my hand a little bit to consider making that triple transfer. So that could look something like Keane, Minteh, and maybe Saka down to Gabriel, not down to, but to Gabriel, Enzo Fernandes, and Rice. So I do actually quite like that transfer. I would be reluctant to sell Saka, but at the same time, Rice is the highest scoring midfielder in the game, and he does allow me to exponentially upgrade my team in other positions. Like Keane to Gabriel is a huge upgrade, and Minteh to Enzo Fernandes is a huge upgrade. So I think as a cohort of 3 players, I'd much rather have Rice, Gabriel, and Enzo than Saka, Minteh, and Keane. So I am leaning towards this transfer. I've got a bit of wiggle room. I don't have to worry too much about price swings. I think I've got about 0.3 million of difference. So I'm really walking that tightrope where I'm trying not to check big price swings, and I'm trying not to make any decisions till Friday. But anyway, Enzo could become Tavernier if I needed some cash. I'm trying to hold on as long as I can, as I mentioned. Now, outside of that, Cunha has been fairly underwhelming for me. Man City at home and Arsenal away for the next 2 aren't great. And in the long term, as I said, I would prefer Bruno Fernandes. So Cunha could make way, and he could be downgraded in the short term to maybe a Tavernier, and then I could then bring Bruno Fernandes in from game week 24. But there are lots of moving parts, so I'm going to have to think about it. And as I said, the news on Ekitike and Minteh and how the next few fixtures pan out in the cup competitions will play a big factor in what I do for game week 22. But I still could roll, as I said, if Ekitike is confirmed fit, and that would give me 4 transfers in game week 23 to make any even bigger moves. So that could work as well. What transfers are you planning in game week 22? And who are you going to put the captaincy armband on? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear your strategy. So there we have it. Game week 21 reviewed with that 51-point score and a 30k red arrow. Thiago and Harry Wilson absolutely saved my game week. Keane's red card has actually given me the perfect excuse to bring Gabriel in, and with all this cup madness happening, patience is absolutely crucial right now. So my approach remains the same: make informed decisions after Friday's press conferences and trust the process over the panic. If you found this video helpful, make sure you're subscribed to FPL Hawley, because I make videos like this every single week. Clear strategy, no panic, just smart FPL made simple. I'll be doing a quick cup roundup video later this week, covering all the key injuries, suspensions, and rotation clues from the FA Cup and Carabao Cup. So keep an eye out for that. Until then, best of luck in game week 22, and let's hope those cup games don't throw us any nasty surprises.